Well, there's not too much left to say. I could add some things to what both Hamza and Suleiman said. For you as teachers, I think it's probably important, and maybe we might have put more emphasis on this. It's important for you to get a sense of what we've just been talking about from a practical point of view, in terms of the Muslims you meet in the world, understanding where they're coming from, so to speak. And so, I think what we've just said is pretty important in terms of what you take away from here. As teachers, I think, having been a teacher myself, I think it's pretty important. We have an obligation to get the true picture. I mean, to get truth across to our students, right? And so all of these stereotypes, they're pretty well embedded. And in terms of recognizing the truth, we have to be able to enable those students to rise above those stereotypes and to see Islam and Muslims for what they really are and what it really is. And that's not an easy thing to do, and it's complicated by the different kinds of Muslims that we meet. And so one of the things that's important to recognize is not only do we have this amazing diversity in process, because it's an extraordinary process, and as Hamza was saying, there's emerging new elements that are emerging, particularly among this young generation, the children of the immigrants. And that is going to be a very articulate group of people who are in the media, who are in politics, who are on the public eye, and are speaking about Islam in a way that Americans can understand it. They're going to be bringing new people into Islam, and they're going to be clarifying Islam for what it is. There's still deep-seated things that run deep in amongst the Americans. I mean, I go to high schools and I speak to the level of students that you have, and usually I'll start my lecture with, well, if I say Islam, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Now, maybe you've gone through some of this already. And, of course, terrorism is one of the most important ones. And here in New Mexico, the second question I usually ask them is, if I were to give you the language of the most likely terrorist, what would it be? And, they'll usually say Arabic to start with, and then, some of them will say, well, English, or the Irish. And then when I tell them, well, it's likely to be Spanish, that more terrorism is done by Spanish-speaking people far and away than any other group of people, and the Arab-speaking is, a small 10% of the world terrorism, they're surprised. And it's hard to sort of convince people of this because they have this other belief that the terrorist is an Arab or that he's a Muslim and so forth. So we have to somehow enable them to rise above the stereotypes and teach them to think for ourselves, and we have to be able to think for ourselves in the first place. So part of what we try to get across here in this institute is a clear picture of what Islam really is, so that then you can understand what the foundation of Islam is about, and then you can understand who comes to you. Because the truth of the matter is, at this point in time, to be honest, if you go to many of the mosques in America, you may meet a lot of these immigrants who have set up a mosque, and they've come to this country for whatever reason, maybe as students originally or to earn some money, but they've set up mosques, and they've come out of a setting, a political and a social setting that's made them very angry and very difficult. And they may not be very communicative about Islam, and the picture they present to you about Islam or to your students, if you want to bring your students, it may not be an accurate picture of Islam. That's why what we've taught you here, in some cases, it may be very important. You may know more than some of the Muslims you encounter. So there's many different forces out there, and there's many different kinds of Muslims.